So there's 4 guys, and the king gives them the challenge. How close can you get me to the edge of this cliff without falling off of it? So the first one comes up and says, I can get you 6 feet away from this cliff, driving and without you falling over. Says, okay, next. Second person comes up, says, I can get you 3 feet away from the edge of this cliff. I'm not letting you fall over. Says, okay, third one says, King, I can get you 1 foot away from this cliff. It's like, okay, fourth guy comes up. He says, King, I would never put you in a situation like that to where you could fall off the edge of this cliff. You are precious, and I'm going to transport you as far away as I possibly can from the edge of this cliff so you do not fall. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the It Stands Written podcast. My name is Braden, and I got Justin here continuing in our series on the second most important decision in your life, that is marriage, and looking at the Christian dating and some practical wisdom from Scripture. Today is the question about purity. So the question that needs to be answered is, are we both passionate about purity? What's the importance of this topic?
Well, this is huge, man. And every couple who would consider dating and righteousness and romance and relationships is going to immediately be confronted with the temptation that exists to every couple. And that's to cross the line of purity by racing ahead of God and trying to enjoy what he has given only for marriage in an attempt to express to the other person what they mean to them through their physical affections. So physical affections are good. They're God-given. They're designed by the Lord. They're honored in his word. He says in Hebrews chapter 13 that the marriage bed should be undefiled, that there's something not only about a married couple in their romance that should be undefiled, but the marriage bed itself is the place where those things are designed to be wonderfully enjoyed and fulfilled. Ecclesiastes says, rejoice in the wife of your youth. Proverbs 5 says, may she satisfy you at all times. There is a wonderful, wonderful gift. And we'll even look at it at the last question about the Song of Solomon and how they enjoyed God's design in their marriage relationship in a wonderful way. But the passion for purity that a couple has to have in their life means that they've thought ahead about what kinds of safeguards can we make sure that we keep in place, that we don't cross the line and do something sinful where God is dishonored by the way that we've taken this wonderful gift of each other and misused it for selfish purposes and self-gratification. So you have the same issue as a single, though. If you're a selfish or let's go all the way to, self-centered and lust enslaved single, you will be a selfish, lust enslaved married person. But here's the danger. The fact that I have a wedding ring on doesn't give me license to be selfish in the marriage bed. Sometimes college students will ask, or couples who are dating and engaged and going to get married, like, what's it like to be married? And they mean like in the romantic and sexual area. And like, what do you do every day? And I'm like, what you're thinking is like, no, wrong. What's it like to have sex every day? I have no idea. Because that's not what marriage is. Marriage is not that. And some people have a warped, and unfortunately in our context, oftentimes a pornographic view of marital intimacy. They've learned from the internet, or they've learned from the locker room, or they've learned from some sullied and defiling piece of input, or even joking and descriptions and whatever else. They've learned the misuse and what is the objectification in a lot of guys' cases towards girls. Like, how do I essentially take this person and devour my sinful appetites on her in a way that's repeated? And now that I have a wedding ring on, I get to do that every day. No, what you've just done is entered into a path of destruction that will ruin your marriage. And so it's so important that you cultivate patterns of purity when you're single. And it's so important that you cultivate patterns of righteousness and purity and accountability when you're in the dating and engaged process to give your marriage bed the greatest and most undefiled, God-given, God-centered, glorious gift that it is to one another. So part of this is, how do you, as a single, not regret something that you have to tell your future spouse where you have to say, I'm sorry. Either I gave to somebody else what I should have given to you. That's a conversation you don't want to have.
Yeah.
Or I've polluted my ability to enjoy this. Or now I'm using this. Every time we're together, I'm filled with temptation to try to take it to something it shouldn't be. And so I'm so distracted, I can't enjoy what God has given to us. Or I'm sorry that I stole from you the ability to honor the Lord. Now that we've come to this moment, it really isn't special anymore. And we've ruined our ability to truly say we've pleased God in this area. I'll tell you what else is at stake, Braden, and this comes from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 is a great passage for purity, especially in the context of dating and couples. He says in verse 3, this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality. Okay, let's just start there. There are couples that will come to me and they're not pure, and they will say, we believe it's God's will for us to be married, or we're looking to see if this is God's will for us that we should get married. And I'll ask, are you pure? And if they hesitate less than a half a second, I know what the answer is. You know, it's like, oh, okay. Now, how far have you gone? And many couples, in fact, probably most couples, I would say, have gone regrettably far, and for way too long. And so my response to that is, well, the revealed will of God in his word is that you be pure and free from sexual immorality. And you're out of the will of God now. So you're trying to figure out how to be in the will of God. And if this relationship is in the will of God, it's not. And your ability to discern the will of God for your future is also too cloudy because you can't see, because your sin is in the way. So your ability to even know whether you should be together is going to be severely hindered by giving into temptation and sin. And your ability to say, we believe this is pleasing to God, is completely off base. And the question becomes, should I believe you or God? And couples will have excuses for why, it's maybe not what it should be. And they view their premarital romance like, flossing. When you go to the dentist, have you been flossing? Dentist knows the answer. Well, not like I should. That's code for no, never. And so we have a way of kind of redefining or justifying compromise in this area. And if you have somebody who's not walking in purity, they have no business moving forward towards the altar because they're out of the will of God. I would not give them any confidence that God wants them to be married. I can't say that he doesn't ultimately want them to be married, but I have no criteria by which to measure it because they're not walking in the scriptures, the decree of what God says. And so I would say you guys need to cultivate patterns of purity before you'll know, because like we said, even before, even deer can mate. So you're a child of God made in his image, so you say, but you're walking in patterns of sin and impurity. What separates you from deer? Right. Like I need something else to go on. Now somebody's going to object to that. And somebody's going to say, well, doesn't 1 Corinthians 7 say that it's better to marry than to burn with passion? And what's the answer to that? Okay, so who is he talking to? So let's create a scenario. If you have a guy who's got unrestrained sexual impulses because he is inflamed in his own lust, is the answer to go get married? No. It's not. Why? And Paul says it's better to marry than to burn. Right. So go find some girl rather than to burn in selfishness and go be selfish with her. Okay, that's not what he has in mind. If you read the context of 1 Corinthians 7, the context of 1 Corinthians 7 is a couple who should be getting married, and God has brought them together, and they have needlessly held themselves back, and they're prolonging their relationship. And because God has not given them the restraint he gives to singles, he's giving them one another, and they should be married, they're starting to struggle, needlessly so. Paul's like, get married. He's not saying if you're overcharged in your hormones and you're constantly looking for somebody to gratify your sexual desires with, find a girl or find a guy.
Right.
I had a guy, I was in singles ministry when I first got into ministry back in California. I was the singles pastor. I had to fire the existing singles pastor because he had warrants out for his arrest for sexual deviant crimes in the state of Massachusetts. I had to fire him. He'd fled to Burbank, where I was pastor, and he was in charge of the singles ministry. And the stuff he was doing in the ministry was like, this is why we need deacons with good baseball bats. That's why, So I fired the guy the first week. He wasn't offended when I confronted his sin. He was offended when I told him he wasn't a Christian. Because the Bible takes away all assurance for somebody who lives like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I took on the singles ministry, and man, it was like a meat market. And we needed to have girls who felt the safety and the freedom to come to our ministry and learn the word of God and find a godly guy if that's what God had for them, but to grow in Christ, not to be, auctioned off,
Yeah.
And so we had people constantly in that city who were drawn to our church and drawn to our singles ministry. Let me find a nice, hot Christian girl who's got some morals. And but I remember a guy came to me and he's like, Justin, man, I am so deep in my sin, man. He said, I need to get married. I said, why? Well, so Paul says if you're burning with lust, you should get married. And I said, well, that's not exactly what that means, Tiger. And he said, no. I'm wasting so much money at strip clubs.
Oh.
And private dances, and I won't go into the description of what he said that I had to bring to an end. But he said, so I want to do what God's word says and just find a girl. So can you help me find a girl in your ministry to match for me? Because I'm burning.
Yeah.
I said, no, dude, no, that's not what it's saying. It's not saying if you're supercharged and always horny that you go find a girl.
Yeah.
What it says is that you take this gift of God and you use it the way that God intended.
Yeah.
And if you're holding yourself back from somebody who you should be married to and God has brought you together by the criteria he's offered in his word, don't unnecessarily put yourself in harm's way. So when you're dealing with sexual lust and dealing with temptation, there's so many obstacles already built in a fallen world. If you found yourself enslaved in the past to pornography, if you found yourself having had multiple partners, or if you found yourself going through some form of sexual trauma, whether it's been a molestation as a child or a rape or something like that, and that's so common, there's so much in this area to work through that you really got to make sure that you give time and attention and care to shepherding to make sure that we don't just traipse ahead with broken sexuality into a marriage where we just expect all of a sudden, now that we have jewelry on our fingers, it's gonna all be fine and pleasing to God. There's a standard of purity that you have to put into place. And there is a reality that you have to concentrate on, that God who gave this made it to function only one way. And it's just like, I'll tell couples, it's like a fire. If you are sitting in front of a fire in the fireplace, it's a wonderful and cozy thing. If the fire is 1 foot outside of the fireplace on your carpet, you're going to burn your house down.
Yeah.
So this is an area where you have to walk very careful.
Yeah.
But this is one of the biggest things I hear. So listener, perk up, lean in, and turn the volume up right here. One of the biggest mistakes I see dating couples make is ask this question: how far can we go? What's wrong with that question?
Well, it's not honoring the Lord. It's saying, how far can we get to sin without sinning? Rather, it should be, how far can we get away from sin to glorify the Lord?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The question is, how holy can I be?
Yeah.
So if I'm saying, technically, what can I really do and how far can I go so that I don't technically cross the line and sin? You're asking the wrong question.
Yeah.
I was telling our equipping hour this last week. Remember the story?
Yeah.
What is it? Go ahead.
So it's a king, and it's 3. He's looking for someone to take his spot as like his servant or
his driver. Yeah.
Driver. Yeah. So there's 4 guys, and the king gives them the challenge: how close can you get me to the edge of this cliff without falling off of it? So the first one comes up and says, I can get you 6 feet away from this cliff, driving and without you falling over. Says, okay, next. Second person comes up, says, I can get you 3 feet away from the edge of this cliff. I'm not letting you fall over. Says, okay, third one says, King, I can get you 1 foot away from this cliff. It's like, okay, fourth guy comes up. He says, King, I would never put you in a situation like that to where you could fall off the edge of this cliff. You are precious, and I'm going to transport you as far away as I possibly can from the edge of this cliff so you do not fall.
That's 100% right. Now, see the difference? I treasure you.
Yeah.
Why would I ever endanger you?
Yeah.
Why? So the question, why would you do that to somebody who's supposedly the most important person in your life next to Jesus Christ? You wouldn't put them in that kind of danger. That doesn't honor Christ to do that. And so now, and the couples are going to be like, okay, so it's okay to kiss, before you're married. Well, the answer is yes. And we know that from Song of Solomon because they kissed before they were married.
Right.
But kissing is the last thing you can do. Everything else beyond that is something you can only do in the marriage bed. So once you open that, you have to realize, is there, number one, the commitment behind that, which in that case there was, and is it rooted and grounded in what's righteousness and what's righteous, and is it held in restraint and accountable so that we don't open up something that we can't close, that we don't light a fire that we can't put out. In fact, the that verse that we mentioned in 1 Corinthians 7, Paul says it's good for a man not to touch a woman. Now, the word touch doesn't mean like the physical proximity where we actually atoms, come in contact.
No
with one
shaking
another.
hands or giving a hug.
No, exactly. And some people have taken it that way. We can't touch. The word there is really instructive. It means to touch so as to inflame. It's what Paul did after the shipwreck when he was on the island of Malta in Acts 28, and he touched the fire to the wood that was burning in the on the island to keep warm and to dry their clothes. To touch so as to start a fire. It's good for you not to do that. It's good for you not to touch somebody in such a way where desires are aroused and inflamed to the point where now you are carried away and captivated by them. So if you're asking the question, how holy can we be and what does purity look like? Here's the beauty of it. If you are serving one another, which builds on previous principles, with your righteousness and romantic affections, the goal of that isn't to serve yourself. See, this is what people often misunderstand. Once I get a partner, now I get to enjoy the benefits. Actually, you weren't given those parts and these capacities to serve yourself. Paul goes on to say, you, to the married person in 1 Corinthians 7, you don't have authority over your body, your wife does, husbands. And wives, you don't have authority over your bodies, your husband does. In other words, the purpose of your body and your physical affection is to serve the other person, not to bring them in such close proximity where they serve you.
Yeah.
Like, I am here to serve you, not to be served. Now, what's beautiful is if two people, like we saw before, are selfless and both people are serving, both people are satisfied, but neither has been selfish.
Yeah.
And it works that way.
Yeah.
It only works when you give yourself away.
Yeah.
I saw when I was a brand new believer a painting that forever changed the way I think about this. And it has nothing to do with sex at all. It has to do with a picture on the left side of people in hell and people on the right side in heaven. The people in hell were seated at a long banquet table. And on the table, there was such incredible and delicious food. Everybody there had access to the finest, like you wouldn't think it's a picture of hell. You're like, how's this a picture of hell? You think of burning in flames, right?
Yeah,
Which the Bible describes. But for the artist's liberty, what he was trying to describe is very instructive. Everybody at the table had access to the food, but their hands were spoons. So they couldn't, when they scooped up the food, they couldn't, because their arms were stiff and straight, serve themselves. So here they had access to the most wonderful, beautiful, incredible thing, but they could never have it. On the right side, the picture of heaven, the same exact banquet table, the same exact food, and the people seated, their hands were spoons. And you probably see where this is going.
Yeah.
They scooped up the food, and they weren't dying, starving, trying to serve themselves. They were all serving each other.
Yeah.
That's a picture of heaven. You want to bring some heaven to your home?
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah.
So same is true in life, same is true in the marriage bed.
Yeah.
Selfish as a single, you're going to be selfish as a married person. If you're filled with lust as a single and walk down the aisle, swap some jewelry, say some words, you're a lust-filled married person coming back down, using now your partner for selfish gratification. So in a very real sense, what you want to do is bring that level of devotion to that. So here's a reality. And ladies, you probably need to hear this more than the men, although that's kind of changing in our day. If you're dating a guy who's trying to pressure you to do certain things that cross the line biblically as a condition for staying in the relationship, you're gonna get tired of me saying this.
A 3-letter word.
Yeah, and you don't even need to write it down. It is
run.
Yeah, go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go. This is a person who is using you for selfish purposes.
Yeah.
You do not want to give yourself to this person. Now, again, is it normal for godly Christian couples to struggle at some point wanting to express what it's now time to do?
Yeah.
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 That just means don't have long engagements.
Yeah.
That's what that means. That's why we've been saying in the series, do pre-engagement counseling, not premarital counseling.
Yeah. Once
you're clear that this is the person you should marry, however long it takes you to get the venue, get the dress, get the license, get the preacher, get the invites out, do it. Because you're not distracted. Now you have a commitment in place. And here's the beauty. If God has you for each other, you have a lifetime to enjoy one another physically. You have a lifetime to enjoy the intimacy that God has given to you. But you'll find that if you do have that wonderful relationship, it's about 5 to 10% of your relationship. The foundation of commitment and friendship is deeper and more than that. But if this area, I'll tell you this, is wrong and jacked up, it accounts for what I've seen maybe over 85 to 90% of the problems that couples have. Couples who have been involved with one another in premarital sex tend to have the worst difficulty sustaining their marriage because they've built into their relationship patterns of selfishness and lust that it not only erode the foundation, but also make it easier when this person no longer gratifies me the way that they did, or this person no longer looks the way they did. He's starting to have a bigger belly. Her waist is not as firm. The crows have stepped under her eyes and she's wrinkled. And this girl over here whose waist is firmer has much more of a pull on me. And now I find myself drawn to and attracted to and emotionally giving myself to someone that I eventually, that becomes the pathology. So setting yourself up for disaster, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. You look like you have a scripture open.
Yeah, it was when you were talking about like the fire, when it's like in the fireplace, it's beautiful, but when it's out, it's destructive. It reminded me of actually Proverbs 6 and verses starting in 27. In the context before this, it's talking about sexual immorality. It's talking about the harlot, the adulterous woman. Verse 27, it says, can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Or can a man walk on hot coals and his feet not be scorched? So is the one who goes into his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her will not go unpunished. But I think there's very practical wisdom here of putting fire into your lap. Like if you get burned, you can't be like, oh, how did I get burned? And I think we can apply that into cultivating purity. And I think we should talk about some just practical examples. Like what are some boundaries that couples can put in place to avoid even the temptation of sexual immorality?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So accountability is number one.
Yep.
So self-initiated accountability. Now, a couple who's like, well, I'm going to count on you to hold me back. That's not a good plan. If one of the partners is saying to the other person, stop me if I do something you're not comfortable with, that's not a good plan. Outside accountability by people who aren't pulled by the same desire for pleasure that you are, they have to be in your life. Now, you see this in the Song of Solomon, and when we get to the end, we'll see this again. But in the Song of Solomon, even in the poetic language, sometimes it gets lost, but it is super clear that they're called the daughters of Jerusalem. The Shulamite in particular, Solomon's engaged wife, both of them have a couple of people in their lives. Her brothers show up in chapter 8 as they describe the pathway of accountability that they had in place for her when she was still single. And this is what they said. They said in chapter 8, it's fascinating stuff, and it's super, super enriching and helpful. They said, we're going to figure out our little sister, they said, before she hit puberty, before she developed breasts, before she was even eligible to appear in court, they actually took her and they stuck her out in the field. And dad apparently was gone. Her dad, something happened to her dad that she didn't have a dad around. So the brothers kind of took up the responsibility of protecting her purity, and they stuck her in the field. That's why when she meets Solomon, she's like, I got a farmer's tan because my brothers were always mad at me. They always stuck me in the field. Well, you learn later, they stuck her in the field and they gave her a job that would make her kind of look less attractive to a potential suitor because they were trying to figure out, was she a door or was she a wall? There's two analogies in there that are really insightful. And the brothers built in before she was even eligible patterns of thinking and patterns of functioning with her that kept her at a safe distance away from sin. And the principle's like this. Okay, if she's a door, we're going to bolt her shut. Meaning if any guy can come up and pick her lock.
Yeah.
Or if somebody just knocks on the door and all of a sudden she opens the door to that person, she's vulnerable. And so if she's a door, he says we're gonna bolt it shut, and we're gonna put on it planks of cedar from Lebanon, which are like the toughest, strongest, biggest trees. Yeah. And we're gonna lock the door. But if she's a wall, like there's no handle, you can't get through, and she's too high, you can't get over. Then we're gonna decorate her with armor and battlements of shields and silver. Meaning, if she's pure and she's able on her own to maintain the vigilance and watchfulness and guardedness where she is impenetrable, and I use this in a double entendre, impregnable. I meant that, by the way, literally. If she's impregnable like a wall, then we're going to celebrate her. We're going to still be there, though. Yeah. If she is a door who opens to whoever knocks, we're going to bolt it shut so that she can't open it. So first of all, we're going to decide before she's even of age, how does she live in such a way where she's out of reach of those people who want to damage her? So that's number one. So whatever you are before you're dating is what you'll be when you're dating. Then when they're dating in the Song of Solomon, the daughters of Jerusalem, as soon as they start finding themselves romantically inclined, and again, the language of Song of Solomon is very shrouded with poetry, but he reaches a point where he says, I want to take you to a cave where nobody can follow us. I want to take off your clothes, see your front, and have you talk to me. Solomon says that before they're married. Yeah. And then he says, she says, they both turned to the daughters of Jerusalem, her accountability partners, and said, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the hinds of the field, that you will not arouse or awaken love until it pleases, till it's time. Meaning there's things that we want to awaken right now that we can't. And the moment we feel the impulse, we make sure that the people who are in our life stand in the way of doing us what we otherwise would give into. Yeah. But what happens as the story unfolds, they realize because their relationship is built on the right things. And by the way, you know what we're going to see in the 12th question? Every single one of the questions we're walking through in this series appear in some form in the Song of Solomon. They have at the foundation the very things that we've been talking about up till now and will continue to. Yeah. So the relationship is not just built on romance. Some people conclude that it is. But then those people insert themselves so that whatever was awakened doesn't happen. And you know what's really cool about that? When they get married, those daughters of Jerusalem and those brothers, they're all there. And then after they're married, they have a big fight. You know what those girls are? They're a place for her to go to get counsel when she tells Solomon, and this is in chapter 5, we're going to study this at the end, you're not worth the dust on my feet. Like that's pretty gutsy to say to the king, the wisest man who ever lived, you're not worth the dust on my feet. She says that to him. He's like, fine, I'm out of here. I'm going to go back to work. And they have a big fight. We don't know what caused it, but we know what the after effect was. She goes right back to those same accountability partners. And just like a faithful, wise, biblical friend and biblical counselor, they point her back to the things that she learned and put into practice in the foundation of their relationship that they're relying on to this day. So you see the value of godly accountability. Yeah. You see the importance of God's help given to you in people that will be harder on you than you'll be on you. Yeah. And I think that goes back to the passage where he said, if you're burning with passion, it's better to marry, but you still have to apply, don't awake love before it's time. Right. If you are doing things that can cause temptation, that's awaking love, and you're like, oh man, I'm burning with passion, I got to get married. Right. You got it backwards. You need to cut off those things that's causing that temptation and that burning. And then if in your purity, there's still that major temptation and that passion, then yes. That's exactly right. No, you're spot on. And you mentioned Proverbs 6. My mind went to Proverbs 5. Can we look at it real quick? Yep. Because Solomon is speaking to his sons about things that they're supposed to learn before they get to puberty. In fact, all of Proverbs 1 through 9 was kind of homeschool curriculum, if you will. Whatever you needed to give your children before they reach marriageable age was in Proverbs 1-9. 3 of the chapters are almost exclusively devoted to this issue of purity, and especially keeping your way far from her. You know, the her I'm talking about, like the harlot, right?
Yep.
So let's point out a few things here, because you're right. If you're looking at pornography, if you're looking at soft pornography, or if you're looking at things that arouse, even without a potential partner, those desires and give them enough of a ounce of gratification to them, you're continuing to endanger your relationship, because eventually no marriage partner is going to be able to keep up with a sinfully stimulated, lawlessly invented expressions of that which perverts God's design. And let me say one other thing too, and this is important. I was thinking about this recently, and it was through a conversation with a friend about something that C.S. Lewis said. C.S. Lewis said, and it's relevant here, Satan has no ability to actually create any pleasure, ever. Now, sin is pleasurable, but Satan has never, ever created a pleasure that anyone has enjoyed. All he's done is perverted the pleasures that God has created to be enjoyed by those who walk in his ways.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the gift of marriage and marriage intimacy, what is sexual sin and impurity but the perversion of that, to take and exploit that with the thrill of a sin that actually damages it and potentially ruins your ability to ever enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so it's just not worth it. Look at Proverbs 5. He has kind of a play on words here. He says, verse 2, observe discretion and your lips reserve knowledge, because the lips of an adulteress drip honey. Like, my words you need to listen to from my lips, because her words coming from her lips are going to be really sweet. Sweet as honey.
Yeah.
So sweet words, smoother than oil is her speech. Verse 4, go ahead.
But in the end, she's bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword.
Wormwood was poison. As soon as you tasted it, it was not only tasted like poison, it was. And a two-edged sword cuts you at any point on the blade. There's nowhere you can touch it where you're not cut. That's the principle here with impurity. You go into a harlot, or you treat, you date and pursue and act out that kind of functional reality, you'll cut yourself every point you touch. Go ahead, verse 5 and 6.
Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold of Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life. Her ways are unstable. She does not know it.
Well, there's some clarity. Okay.
Yeah.
So the principle here, you can't have it. You can't have it. Okay. So number one, determine in your mind, there's a clear line that you can't cross. You can't have sex. Your clothes can't come off. You can't do things that married people do with the very instruments that God gave you, your intimate parts God gave you to serve the other person. Those cannot be engaged in any way prior to marriage. That's it. What we do have in Scripture is kissing. But even kissing, they're kissing, and all of a sudden they're going, oh my goodness, this opens up for us the imaginations of what could be. Now, some couples are like, well, we're not going to kiss until we're married. Well, you could do that. You don't have to do that. If that's a line you want to keep so that you don't cross, fine, you can do that, but that's not binding on you. You can't make that binding on somebody else. But you realize even the act of holding a hand can open the emotional floodgates that can lead to more. So you gotta have this kind of decided in advance, right? Okay, now look at verse 8. What's verse 8 say?
Keep your way far from her, and do not go near the door of her house.
So there's a principle, the principle of safe distance.
Yeah.
So we know where we fall. Where do we fall? So if you're a couple that's dating, you probably don't want to spend a lot of time lingering in the upper parking lot of a, where the lights are out in the parking lot. You don't want to be like, well, let's go inside your apartment where just you're there and lock the door and cuddle and talk. Yeah. That's no. There were times when I was dating Jana, we'd pull up and I'd say, get out. And drop it off, get out. Well, I wanted to get out right now. Well, are you mad at me? Nope. Just the opposite. Get out of my car right now. I want to do things to you that married people do, and you need to leave right now. You need to get out of this car. Well, no, get out or I'm getting out. You're going to drive. There was just a reality that's like, she didn't understand, but I'm going, things inside of me I am aware of. Yeah. I need to catch those.
Yeah. And I think there's a principle there that we see in Scripture. I mean, it says it, and in here too, when it's talking about sexual immorality, what does it not say to do? It doesn't say to fight it.
Right.
It says to flee from it.
Always.
Flee immorality. And that's what you're doing. You say, hey, I'm tempted, get out of the car.
Right.
And that's something that I struggle with myself, is like trying to fight it. Just like, oh no, I know it's tempting, but I can fight it. I'm not going to give into it. And it's like, no, I'm
right.
not obeying scripture. It says to flee. Like if you're home alone with the person you're dating and you're getting those temptations, sorry, getting in my car, I'm driving home, I'll text you.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. If you're fighting, you're losing.
Yeah.
1 Corinthians 6, flee immorality.
Yeah.
Yep. It's just super clear. You can't win if you're staying there. Absolutely. No, that's good. That's good. Well, and the principle here too, you don't want this. Look at how devastating it is, but it's also true. You can't handle this. You can't handle it. Keep your way far from her. Yeah. The legalist is going to be like, well, how close can I get to the door of her house before technically? No, get away.
Yeah, flee.
Run. Yeah, this don't even get near it. Don't even get close. You say, well, just walking by her house is not a sin. No, keep your way far from the door of her house. Yeah. There's a guy, Charles Bridges. I find him always helpful. His commentary in the book of Proverbs, I just have this open here. He says in an ancient, eloquent way, you play with fire, you're going to get burned. He says this, quote, to thrust ourselves into temptation is to throw ourselves out of God's protection. Not good. Yeah. The snare, as it approaches, becomes more enticing. The voice of wisdom is this: flee youthful lusts. That's exactly right. Yeah. If you throw yourselves into temptation, you throw yourselves out of God's protection. And we've said this maybe before. I don't think we said it on this podcast, but we should probably say it now. When we talked about Solomon in dating the dead, turned his heart away. He was the wisest man who ever lived, and he fell here. Yeah. David was the godliest man in the Old Testament. He failed here. Yeah. Samson was the strongest man in the Old Testament. He failed here. Okay, here's the reality check for me. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the wisest. I'm not the godliest. So the only way I can hope to have victory is to run. Yeah. If I'm staying, I'm losing. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. Proverbs 5. We're just asking for some practical things here. Look at what it says in verse 9. I don't know. Go down to verse 14.
Or you will give your vigor to others and your years to the cruel one. And strangers will be filled with your strength, and your hard-earned goods will go to the house of an alien. And you groan at your final end, when your flesh and your body are consumed. And you say, how I have hated instruction, and my heart spurned reproof. I have not listened to the voice of my teachers, nor inclined my ear to my instructors.
Yeah, this is, you don't need utter ruin. Yeah. This will ruin you. Yeah. Okay, so you'll give your vigor to others, probably your health, your strength, your stamina, certainly honor. You could lose all that. Like, this isn't worth it. Yeah. Giving your years to the cruel one. So either that means sin's effects are going to last so much longer the rest of your life, you'll never escape them, or potentially not only you waste your years that you have the rest of your life cleaning up your mess, but your years could actually be shortened even by some disease or some spouse who comes in and finds you, right? Or some legal punishment and penalty that you get. Strangers filled with your goods, people who are divorced. Yeah, look at that person driving your car, living in your house, parenting your kids. I mean, because this is the consequence of doing it as a married person. This is you'll groan at your latter end in verse 11. I happen to know this. The word here in Proverbs 5:11 for groan means to rot. You will rot all the way to the end. So you want your life to look like that? Writhing in sadness and misery? Like the drop of pleasure is not worth the ocean of pain that you will endure here. Your flesh and body consumed. And then you say, after it's too late, oh, I hated that. I should not have done it. Yeah. Here's the principle. There's no do-overs. Yeah. So how about, can we end this kind of on a positive note? Yeah. Because that's kind of a bummer. Yeah. But it's truth. It's sober truth, right? But look at verse 15. I think this is so cool. So drink water from your own cistern and fresh water from your own well. So he's using the analogy. Now he's talking to a kid who's still a boy before he becomes a man about what he should do when he's got a wife of his own. Should your springs be dispersed abroad? Like who takes his own precious water in an arid place like Israel and takes a bucket of that and just dumps it in the streets? What an idiot that would be, right? Yeah. Wasted it like that. Right. He says, let them be yours alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed. And here's what he means. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. There's a pot. You don't need sin. God's got an alternative to impurity. It's called marriage, and it's marriage to a godly woman. As a loving hind and a graceful doe, let her breast satisfy you at all times. Be exhilarated always with her
love,
not body, love. Exhilarated with her love. For the eyes, verse 21, of a man, the ways of a man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he watches all his path. There's something about the horror of God's omniscience that needs to be unleashed. God is there, God sees, and God watches all the paths. You may have heard me tell this story, but I think it's worth repeating here because it's really, really relevant. When we were in college ministry, of course, this is a big temptation in a college ministry size. We had over 1,000 kids. And our pastor, our lead pastor, Rick was his name, was telling us about a counseling case that he says, I'll never forget it. He said, I sat down with a couple and they came, and I asked them every week as we did premarital, you guys pure? Oh, yeah, pure, great, absolutely no problem. Great. It's amazing. You guys don't struggle at all? Nah, man, it's great. It's great. That's really unusual that a couple wouldn't struggle. So either you're super like godly, or maybe you're not quite being as honest. No, I just promise you, we're it's great, no problems at all. Okay, yeah, I trust you. You wouldn't lie to me, right? No. So does the wedding a couple weeks after, once they're back from the honeymoon, they make an appointment on his calendar, sit down and say, hey, Rick, we just have to tell you something. And his head is hung low, and she's staring at him mad. And they're married. And she says to him, tell him. Says, Rick, we lied to you the whole time. We were having sex all the time. And every time you asked us, we flat out lied to your face. And we're just really sorry. But we felt like we needed to tell you. And Rick goes, guys, thanks for telling me. But he was really quick. He goes, I should just probably let you in on this. Somebody already found out and knew. And they're like, oh, shoot. Who was it? Was it our roommate? Like, did he come in and hear us? And it wasn't the roommate. Was it our landlady? Oh, my word. She's so nosy. Did she tell on us? What wasn't the landlady? It was God. And they literally sat up, and their countenance, which had been fallen, lifted. And then they said, oh, just God. And right there in that moment, he knew that what he didn't have was a lust problem. There was a God problem.
Yeah.
That if the eternal, sovereign, mighty, majestic, holy, holy, holy God isn't compelling enough for me to pursue purity in private when no one's looking, a pastor's not going to be, a landlady's not going to be, a roommate's not going to be, a gun loaded, pointed to your head's not going to be. Nothing will be. If God's not, who is the most powerful, most compelling being in the universe and the source of all satisfying joy, then there's nothing will be.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself fulfilled in God's design, sin and temptation don't even appeal.
Yeah.
So I think this practical lesson, and it's good for us to take a little longer on this today, because this is the area where Satan makes most couples fall apart and create foundations, cracks in it that then for the rest of their lives, they live with regret and struggle and continue to perpetuate and to their grief and to the agony of their souls. And they rot.
Yeah.
And so may it not be. So if you are a couple, can we just end with this, who is dating and you're excited about it and you're beginning to feel those righteous and romantic desires emerge, that's not wrong. Get accountability in place now. That undistracted devotion to Christ, that kingdom service that keeps you occupied and focused, being around other wise and godly people that are holding you accountable. All of those things right now are in place. And it might be different the way you apply it than another couple, but be clear what the line is. Yeah. And have people in your life that you refuse to lie to that will ask you the hard question. And if you're struggling, don't wait to say, well, we're not meeting for them for 2 weeks, so we got kind of a gap of 2 weeks. No. If you're meeting with me, get me up out of bed at 3 a.m. and saying, we're tempted right now. Would you pray with us or get in the car and drive to us? And well, what should we do? Like, more important than you sinning against God and ruining your foundation is getting me up out of bed, or whoever it is that's in your life helping you to do what's right and well-pleasing to him. So it's a sober podcast today.
Yeah, definitely.
But if we're passionate about purity,
Yeah.
and we got patterns of righteousness, okay, move on to the next question.
Yeah. All right. And that next question we will go over in the next episode. But we thank you for listening to this episode of the It Stands Written podcast. And Lord willing, we will see you in the next one.